Thank you very much for inviting me here today. And I couldn't make it in December. I finally got COVID a couple of days right before the session, so there was no way I could come and share that with you. Plus, I couldn't get out of bed. So if I do have a little cough here and there, I've found that it comes back periodically. So I'm tested, I'm negative, I'm good, but I'm going to stay up here away from you as well, but I'm good to go. So thank you very much for all coming out today, and thank you so much for your enthusiasm and wanting to learn about moraines. I think that it's frankly, a concept I didn't know about until the advocacy in the 1990s. I didn't know what a moraine was. As Bob says, my background is finance and living in the city, so what did I know about a moraine and water, where it came from? I was your typical, live in the city person, turn on the tap, and there comes the water. So what's the problem here? But as I was home and learning more about it and not working and being with my children, I took them out on moraine walks and got more involved in the advocacy and finding out where did our water actually come from and how do we impact it by living on the lands. So from that went into the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust and then the executive director, and I'm the CEO. So the Land Trust has been around since 2001. We started around the same time as the plan, and we're still going strong. So there's some good models out there across Canada. I'm also involved in the Federal Land Trust Association, and we just had our first conference in Ottawa, and going on Wednesday to meet with the Minister of Environment about funding that the federal government is coming forward with. So it's really great that there's been that continuous funding from the federal Liberal government. Right now, the newest one is called the Nature Smart Solutions, and it's about taking land and restoring them and bringing back species at risk and helping with climate change. So we're really thrilled to be able to get a lot of our funding from grants like that, both at the federal, provincial level, and then, of course, private donations and foundations. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the moraine, and I know Bob talked a lot about this when he did his presentation in December. I'm not nearly as knowledgeable as he is, but you might understand what I'm saying a little bit more because it's kind of common language, and you probably don't know as much as Bob does, but he did a great job telling you all about the details of it last time. So it was formed, the Oak Ridges Moraine, about 13,000 years ago. It's a very unique landscape, but I noticed as I was driving up here, it had the same slopes, it had the same up and down hummocky type of land. So you certainly got, a moraine here. It might be smaller than the large Oak Ridges Moraine, but it's still got all those features there, and it's about protecting the water. So it has habitat, and for the Oak Ridges Moraine, it protects the water for at least 250,000 people. But I think it also impacts a lot of people in Greater Toronto area. So I think that number is a little low. I think it should be a lot higher than that. Those are the people that actually have wells and get water from the aquifers there. My understanding is that you have about 24,500 people here in Oro Moraine. I don't know if that number's correct or not. It's internet, so hopefully it's around the right number. So, but you've got a smaller moraine, so there's other impacts that can happen on that. Go next to this slide. It is within the green belt, so hopefully you've heard about the green belt. It was a little bit lately with the news, it was there to protect the water and expand beyond the Oak Ridges Moraine, because we knew that it wasn't just the moraine, it's the countryside around it. At one point, they were talking about a blue belt. And well, I've got a picture of that later, and it was an even further expansion. So we were just thrilled to get the Greenbelt, and then thrilled to make sure that we had the Greenbelt Foundation that was able to do funding and grants and support charities and other groups to continue to do work on the Greenbelt and the Moraine and to continue to protect it. It is quite large. It stretches 160 kilometers. So it goes from Niagara Escarpment all the way to the Trent River in the east. It connects up with the Bruce Peninsula, and the trails that we have on the Oak Ridges Moraine. A lady here I was talking to said she didn't know the Oak Ridges Moraine had a trail, and I said, oh my goodness, it goes end to end. So if you love hiking and do any hiking on the Bruce Trail, not as maybe scenic water views as you would get on the peninsula, but you do get some beautiful forest views, and you do get actually along the Bloomington Road, if you drive along that road, you can actually see the city. So there's some really wonderful sights on that area as well. So again, 190,000 hectares in the Oak Ridges Moraine, so a lot of hectares there, and about over 8,000 kilometers of square of greenbelt lands protected. So the government's doing a good job. People are doing a good job. We need councils to understand and respect what's happening at that level. And hopefully we've got some counselors here today, so some people that are new, some people that I think have been in the position for a while. So be happy to take any of your questions, and hopefully you'll learn from this. Here's the flows of the moraine, and just coming off 30 rivers north and south off the Oak Ridges Moraine. Some of them go into Simcoe, most of them go into Lake Ontario. But as you can see, there's a lot of water aspects of the moraine, not only on the aquifers under the ground, but on the water flows and the streams coming off the Oak Ridges Moraine. Next. This is a cutaway of this here, and it was published in one of the papers way back when we started the Oak Ridges Moraine advocacy. And it just gives kind of a visual schematic of what's under the ground on a moraine and why it's so important. So basically it talks about how the rain and the melting snow are coming down and feeding all the permeable surface. And if you've ever been driving on the moraine, and the Oak Ridges Moraine for sure, there's a lot of gravel and sand deposits. And you'll be, coming along some of those roads, there's dump trucks everywhere. That's one of the benefits of the Oak Ridges Moraine, and one of the things we also need to protect. So it's kind of a double-edged sword when you get that type of commodity. So it will flow down and then feeds into the aquifers and various layers. Somebody was asking me, one of the counselors about, I think Peter, about, how do we measure aquifers and can we tell? And aquifers they show them there as, looks like they're bodies of water under the ground, but they're not really a body of water. They're mixed in with a lot of different soil and different types. So it's my understanding, but I'm not a hydrologist, that you can't really measure what's in there or tell as you're using it up, other than you have streams that might be getting less water in them, less volume. You may have studies where they can tell, and the municipalities may say, okay, the flow isn't as good, we're going to need to bring in some water and mix. So that's what they did in the town I live in Aurora. They said, oh, we're worried we're going to run out of this aquifer, so we're going to bring in water, pipe it in, and we're going to mix it together, other than people that are on wells. And so I don't know if they had an inclination that maybe things might get worse, or just thought, we'll just mix it together and make sure we don't run into any problems. So that's kind of the whole aspect of the moraine. I can go over other things, but hopefully many of you were here and listened to Bob's great presentation. And if you didn't, it's on YouTube. So I listened to it there and saw what he had said in much detail. Just wonderful, Bob, that you're here and able to answer any questions that people might have about that for me, okay? Next. And this is one of Bob's. He let me share one of these, the features of the moraine. Again, not my area of expertise, but certainly kettle lakes are a wonderful attribute of the Oak Ridges Moraine. We're fortunate enough to have a property that was donated to us by two sisters back in 2006. They had a little house on a 17-acre property that is at the top of the hill, and the bottom is a little kettle lake. So we've just been fortunate enough to be able to, for a number of years, been able to now renovate that house, and we have our office in that house. So it's a beautiful little gem of a office and property. And it certainly reflects the topography of the Oak Ridges Moraine. We lose cell phone coverage when we go down the road, and we're that close to the city. Kettle lakes, Kames, glacier lakes, drumlins. I know Bob talked about them. We have a property out on the east side of the Oak Ridges Moraine, and it has several drumlins on it, and they are so cool to see. They're just like, they just come out of nowhere in this farmer's field, and the farmer's like, whoa, what? No, we just go around them. We put all the old rocks around them, and you can just see these drumlins coming out of the field. So some really interesting topography with the Oak Ridges Moraine, and you think about that massive sheet of ice moving back and forth all those years ago, created this for us so that we can have these beautiful scenery, beautiful forests, streams and rivers, and healthy water underground. So it's up to us to keep it that way for us and for future generations. Next. This is, again, one of Bob's maps. I'm not that familiar with this area, but certainly he's indicated to you where the moraine is here, the Oro Moraine is here, as well as some of the wetland complexes. Very important to keep them protected, as well as the creeks and the swamps and everything that are key to protecting a moraine, whether it be here or anywhere else. But this is your moraine. This is the blue belt that I was talking about. This was a dream of I think it was the NDP party, and they wanted to take the green belt plan, which is the green and connected to the Oak Ridges Moraine, and add the blue belt to it. And frankly, most environmentalists and people are like, okay, well, sure, if it protects our water and gives us, protection around the edges of the moraine, why not? Unfortunately, didn't get passed, didn't go forward, but it's still there. So there's still an opportunity as we move forward to look at expanding the protection. Rivers and wetlands, resilience, climate change, those are the reasons you need to protect your water and your land. We can't build another land. Now, they say they can build a wetland, but it really doesn't function the same way. Doesn't do the same work that a natural wetland would do. Next. And forests. Forests, again, clean our air. They're a great ability to suck in the carbon and help us through this climate change as well. And I see here you have beautiful forests and beautiful trees in this area. So really important for you to protect them and not sort of segregate them and put, I know it's a lovely venue to have your house in the middle of a lot that's all forested, but it breaks that connectivity. And so it's really important for the councillors in the town when they're doing their planning to look at much larger areas to protect so that you've got much larger forests and rivers and streams, not just a forest that lovely for people to live in that maybe have 10 or 20 acre lots, but it's breaking up the forest and the continuity.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Smudging is a very important part in our life as we're all learning to walk the good way. When we smudge, we use the sacred medicine, the white sage, the sweetgrass, the tobacco, and the cedar. It cleanses negative energy and replaces it by a positive energy. When I smudge, I cleanse my end and my eagle feather and start cleansing my breath to have better words. I will smudge my eyes so I could see the better things offered to me. I will smudge my ears to hear the good thing that people have to say. I will smudge my hair to have good thinking from my head. I will bring the smudge to my feet so I could walk in respect with our Mother, the Earth. Smudging is the way we give our prayers to connect our spirit to the Creator. We express gratitude for the gift of life, the learning, and growth.
After a night out with your friends, not having a plan for a safe ride home can leave you in a bad spot. You could end up riding in a police car, an ambulance, or a hearse. These unplanned modes of transportation can be a costly choice and do not take you home. Your plan could include a designated driver, a taxi, or public transit. Drink responsibly, choose your ride, and have a plan for a safe ride home.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more.
Focus better.
Partner better.
Sleep better.
Breathe better.
Love better. Work better. Friend better. Unwind better.
Everything gets better when you get active.
Next. Sensitive species, I don't know the specifics up here in your area, but I know across the Moraine there are probably, between 25 and 50 species at risk, and we find them missing on a lot of the properties that we're on when we do surveys. Sure, it's similar up here. Again, there's ways to protect them by protecting the natural features, and hopefully there's some we can bring back from the brink of. We've just started a project for the Kirtland warblers. And they are a little bird that disappeared, that were endangered in the States for many years. They did a lot of restoration work in Michigan. They brought them back. They are no longer endangered in the States, but they are still endangered here. So we are working with the US, the American Bird Conservancy, out in Northumberland, with Fleming College, with specialists, about how do we bring this bird back. And tomorrow we are finalizing a purchase on one of our first properties that we are actually going to restore for the Kirtland warbler. A lot of cooperation from a lot of the federal government funds. Hopefully provincial will kick in when they get our grant. Private donors to be able to purchase that first property. And it's the first of a 10-year plan to look at protecting lands across the Moraine. They like sandy soil, so you guys might be able to do one too up here. You have the Simcoe, yeah, you have that there. But I mean, you might be able to do another restoration. They haven't yet got Kirtland warblers. I think they've been there, but they haven't yet nested in the Simcoe County forest. And so, hopefully, but connect it together with the sandy soils, and that's where you want to look at restoring for the Kirtland warbler and about 25 other species at risk. So it's not just the one bird, but they're all connected, kind of like we are, right? They're all connected. We're all from different families, but we all connect together and form a community, and that's what we want to do in terms of nature. Trails, we have, like I said, we have the Oak Ridges Moraine Trail. I know you have trails up here, and I encourage you to take a look at the trail system. There's maps online. They used to have end-to-end competitions and rallies and things like that. We're working with them again to bring that back with the Greenbelt Foundation and do more work there. So, take a look at the trails. Get out in nature. Certainly makes me feel better. I'm sure it makes many of you feel better as well. And this is just the natural systems and storing and absorbing carbon dioxide. So this is really important that we continue to do this for climate change. And wetlands. You've got wetlands up here. Again, a healthy, resilient ecosystem has to have wetlands. And some of the technical guys will say we can re-engineer them to be here, or I love where they say, we can offset it. I had somebody call me from up in Sudbury and say, we've got something happening up here in an application. Do you have some land that we can offset? And I said, in the Oak Ridges Moraine? Like from Sudbury? that's not going to work. Like whatever species you've got up there, it's not going to find our piece of land down here. So, that's not a thing. And I know it's part of the planning and the development and world, but they justify it with all sorts of reports. And I'm not saying the reports are wrong. I just don't know that we have the proof that that actually will offset and those species will come back. Next. So Save the Oak Ridges Moraine. Has anyone heard of it? once or twice. So that's how I got involved. Like I said, a home board with 2 kids going, oh God, what am I going to do? And started going out on the walks, and then of course started advocating and stopping developments, started a ratepayers group. It's still going on. I'm not actively involved anymore. They call me once in a while and say, can you come and go over this, or can you come to council and yell at them? And I'm like, okay, I'll try. But it's hard to fit everything in. And that was, I think, the success of Save the Oak Ridges Moraine, is that they had small community groups across the moraine in towns where things were happening, where there was developments that were going through that we didn't think was correct, that people were questioning and saying, well, why is this here, and why is this forest going to be gone, and all of these offset things that they're talking about. And intrinsically, you may not be a specialist in that, but you just know that just doesn't sound right. So how do we prevent that, or how do we make sure that the best thing goes through? And so we had marches and rallies and all sorts of things, and finally, coincidentally, at the same time, the provincial government was doing studies and was looking at a protection plan, and they brought that in 2001. So we all thought, oh, great, it's done. We're good. Now it's here. It's going to protect everything. There was a whole long learning curve of all of the counselors trying to learn the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan, all of the planning staff trying to learn and figure out how that fit in with their municipal plans. It was a very, very long process. Some of the municipalities took about 5 years to put forward a conforming bylaw to make sure that their plans also gave credit to and looked at the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. And I don't think we're there yet, because as the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust, we get calls from people all the time telling us, where they can put their septic bed. And I'm like, nope, not us. Go to the town. And they said, oh, the town sent us to you to see if you would approve it on the Oak Ridges Moraine. And I'm like, no, back to the town. So there's still some confusion somewhere, either between the council, the planning staff, the public, as to who actually is in charge of the plan. The plan was put on at the provincial level, but it's up to the planning departments in each council and each community to uphold that plan and make sure that it intermingles with your town plan, and that you're giving due credit to what's there and making sure that you're adhering with that. Now, you don't have that up here, but I would suggest that might be something you might want to strive for, with your provincial. I don't know if there's a provincial person in the crowd today, but I know you have a provincial representative. You should be talking to them and saying, hey, is somebody here? Am I know, or it's just a lost cause? It's a lost cause. Well, it might be with this government, but that's going to change over. And I think the thing is we got a really low voter turnout for this past election, and shame on everybody who didn't vote, and I'm sure it's none of you, but who didn't vote and now are complaining about what's happened. Our vote is really important, both from our young people who are going to be living in this world after we're gone, and we're creating a lot of trouble right now, and you can see with the climate change, it's just getting worse. So it really is up to everyone to get out find out about your candidates and vote, whether it be at the local level, the provincial, or the federal, because that's how we get change. You can go to your council after the fact, but if you don't listen to the people as they're presenting their platform and get to know them and make sure that they're the right counselor for you and the right attitude, then you get what you didn't vote for, or you get what you voted for, right? So that's my little talk on elections and how you can use that for advocacy for what you want in your community. Make sure that your politicians know what you want. I used to go to council all the time. I think they had a seat for me most of the time, right? and then they did, a couple years later, gave me a Citizen of the Year. I think it was just to get me to go away, right? And not come anymore. So, so you can be a thorn in their side. You can do it politely. You can do it, very smart. Take a look at the policies, and you can say, I don't know. I said that so many times to them. I used to have monthly meetings with the planning director because I said, look, you can either tell me this privately or I'm going to come to council. And they're like, oh, no, it's okay. Come on in. We'll make time for a public meeting, private meeting rather than a public one. So that's sort of my history in terms of Save the Oak Ridges Moraine. It's back. It sort of went into a little bit of a, well, we don't need storm anymore, but we do. So we've reconstituted the board. There's a number of people from, retired people from the Conservation Authority. I'm back on the board. I'm not doing the treasurer's role because I don't have time for that. But I've been doing, sort of the last 30 years, advocacy. So that's what I'll continue to do in that role. So there's a number of reports that are going to be coming out. One of the councillors, Peter, asked me about some aquifer measuring. I got a whole raft of huge reports late last night. I haven't even looked at them, but I'll forward them on to council. You can take a look at them, probably get your staff to look at them. And it explains about an aquifer and measuring capabilities, which are really not very, very good. That's my sort of quick read of the summary parts of it. I think it's a very finite resource, just as our air is, just as our world is. It's finite resource, so we have to be careful how we use it. We can't say, oh, there's a lot now. Let's just use it all now and figure out when it gets too low or figure out when we're in trouble. When you're in trouble, it's going to be really hard to replace that water. So think about that clearly before you make those decisions and look at all the studies. And yeah, you want to grow an area, you want to get more people in, it brings more taxes, and especially now because you're going to have to pay more development charges because the province changed the formula, so now the developers don't pay the development charges. The towns are going to have to pay them. So that's a real thing to think about when you're looking at development. Because that model has changed. I don't know how much you've looked at that. I've just looked at it very briefly when it came out, but I know there's a number of councils that are looking at that and trying to determine how much extra they're going to have to pay in development charges, therefore how much more your taxes are going to have to go up to pay for development. So think of that when you're looking at development.
What kind of show do you want to see on Rogers TV? What interests you? Log on to rogerstv.com, fill out a show proposal, and tell us about your segment idea. We want to know what you want to see. Rogers TV, only on Rogers.
Long way from Nashville, and mama, I'll tell you that. Performed from Montreal to Boston to Los Angeles. But Toronto, that's my chosen home. Sure, when I'm walking down Yonge Street, I see some funny people who have the nerve to point the finger at me. And grin and smile and whisper. My song was #2 on local radio. Sold 10,000 in Toronto alone. Turned down Ed Sullivan because they asked me to remove my makeup. Wouldn't do American Bandstand because of their segregation policies. I was just being me. Never tried to explain myself to anyone. And besides, none of that to worry, Jackie, because I know I look good. Got a new way of loving, baby. Go Charlie, want to teach it to you.
Jackie Shane was a pioneer transgender soul singer, a central figure in the Toronto R&B scene. She helped shape what we know as the Toronto sound.
It's closing time, and you stayed out longer than you planned. So now you can't drive, and the buses have stopped running. You could always call your girlfriend. Or maybe your roommate? What about your best friend? You could just dial 1-888-TAXI-GUY or use the Taxi Guy app. The call and the app are free, and they both connect you to a local cab company to bring you home safely. Visit arrivealive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive, drive sober.
So the model for advocacy hasn't really changed over the years, in my opinion. But you need to develop that network of contacts, right? You need to find like-minded people, and you need to find, frankly, people who disagree with you. So you can convince them and give them the material and give them, you know, the background. And it doesn't have to be, you know, something really, like, you know, everything. I readily admit, I don't know the details. I don't know the technical side of it. But I know what can happen if we don't look after it. And if we're not aware of what we're doing with our planet and our resources, and we can see it happening worldwide. We're seeing a little bit of it here this winter, which doesn't even feel like winter, frankly. You've got a little bit more snow up here than we do in the city, but you know, we were down to bare concrete mostly through February and January, and I don't remember that happening in my lifetime. I remember one time out playing football with, you know, many years ago, but I think that was an odd occurrence in December. So, you know, things are changing, and we can't just sit back and say, oh, it's somebody else's responsibility. It's all of our responsibility, because we all live here now, and we all know that there's going to be future generations of our children, grandchildren, and people living on this planet. So, you know, take a look at what's happening in your local town. You could be that person who gets the reserved seat if you wanted to in those monthly meetings, because really they want to do that. They don't want you at council. They want you to learn, and hopefully, you know, there's nothing to hide. There should be nothing to hide with planning. There should be nothing that, you know, can't be explained to you in commonplace language. You can't understand the technical parts of it. And, you know, you can also, you know, probably find someone retired, and Storm's going to start putting more of those resources together for people, you know, who might need an extra opinion, an outside opinion, that may or may not agree with your staff and counselor positions. So, but everybody should be able to learn. It's not a bad thing. If there's any counselors here that you know, are thinking it's going to be a lot more time, yeah, it might be a lot more time. You know, you might have to educate more people, but that's really the role of government, is to educate people and then make the best decisions that they can. And then I know you have a lot of First Nations around here, but that's a really key, important factor now. And I think what we've learned, our land trust, along with our Ontario Land Trust and with our land trusts across Canada, is that there's a lot of knowledge in the Indigenous peoples that we are just not really understanding. And we're taking for granted that we know the best way. But I don't think we do. I think we're showing with, you know, someone like said, climate changes and things that are negative that are happening in our environment, that we actually maybe are, you know, being detrimental to the environment. They do farming. Farming is great. 50% of the properties that the Oak Ridges Moraine looks after are farms. And so that's a really important thing. We want to have food, but we want to be doing it the right way as well, and making sure that we're not having a negative impact on the environment. Now, again, I'm not a farmer, but I know there's a number of different ways to do that, and I know I work with the Ontario Farmland Trust, and they're looking at how do they protect farms and how do we have a farm that is providing a net positive gain to the environment as well as providing good food for everyone, and hopefully local food. Why should we be shipping things all around the world? I know I really prefer local food. I will always, take local food over food from somewhere else. And, I think that's a good way to support your community, your farmers, reduce the impact on the world of shipping things all over the place. And I like to know where it comes from. Sometimes when I get, something that's from Peru or something, I'm like, oh, I wonder what happened to this before it got into this plastic container. Whereas I know when I go to my local farmer that they're taking care because they're likely eating the food, and it's a better source. It tastes better too.
Be a slave. That word, I hate it. It rests on my tongue like rot.
Peter, how does it feel to get paid for your work?
There are rumors freedom's coming for us all.
Freedom, that's all I want.
Chloe, careful. Real men would rather sell you across the river to America than let you go free.
Then I'll run.
I've run before. Maybe this time for good.
Chloe, no!
Word of Chloe Cooley's resistance led to Canada's first legislation limiting slavery. After 200 years, slavery was abolished in Canada in 1834.
After a night out with your friends, there's always options for getting home safely. You could call your BFF, your mom or dad, whoever you can count on for a safe ride home. You could call your favorite cab company or 1-888 taxi guy. Or you could use the Arrival Live smartphone app to help you choose your ride. Be it a friend, transit, or taxi, getting home safely is app easy. Now available for iOS and Android devices. Visit arrivallive.org to find out more. Arrival Live, drive sober.
Focus better.
Partner better.
Sleep better.
Breathe better.
Love better. Work better. Friend better. Unwind better.
Everything gets better when you get active.
Okay, next. Find a hero. There must be a hero in this room. There's got to be a couple of you here. So you need a hero, somebody who inspires you. Dorothy Izzard was a lovely, lovely lady, and she was one of the founding members of STORM. I met her many times out in the rallies, and then we used to meet in the grocery store just because we shopped at the same store at the same time, and we would be in there for hours talking about, what do we do further to help protect the moraine. And so she's someone who's recently passed away, but she inspired a lot of people to get involved, and she was just this little sweet lady who said, no, we have to do something. And she donated her land, so she took that step personally and said, this is really important that my land is protected. All of you can do that, whether you have land or money or time. Those are all things that are very valuable that you can donate as individuals to help better the area you live in here and further. And so through all of that, she attended those rallies. She was just this quiet, she was a Spitfire, but she was quiet. And I think because she spoke so quietly, people had to stop talking to hear her. And I think that's a really important thing when people are having an argument or trying to get their opinion across. You know, they get louder, right? And louder. And she would just stand there and just quietly say, no, you're not listening to me. I want to know this, I want to know that. And finally, they would stop with the yelling and carrying on, and they would listen to what she would have to say. And then there was communication happening. So she was very good through all of those rallies and all of those meetings. And then soon after that, Steve Gilchrist and the provincial government brought in the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. Now, like I said, they were already working on it because they'd been getting poked a lot in the 1990s about what was happening. And they were really thrilled to bring that in. And he is now back working as a volunteer with us, the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust, and he during the pandemic, took another course on the environment. And he'd had all this background and a number of different things, but he went back and, no, I'm gonna look at this, and he called me up and he said, I saw your name, he said, on my list of potential, would you take me on as a student? I'm like, what? You're not a student. You're former MPP and Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation. He goes, yeah, I know, but I need some time as a student, and I want to come back and work for you. I said, okay, but this time you have to listen to me, right? Like, you know, I know you're used to being a politician, but you got to listen. And he's been great. He's come back. He finished his internship with us, passed his course with flying colors, and is now somebody who's helping us on an advocacy issue with Mary Lake, which is a little kettle lake in King Township. And they're trying to get a long-term care home put in beside a kettle lake that has no absolute reason to be there. But they're going to try, and we're going to stop them. So he's involved in that. Next, yeah, so proceed cautiously as you do things, but gather everybody to you, whether, like I said, they agree with you or not. I think the people that don't agree with you are the people that are as important, or maybe more important, that you're able to talk to them rationally and calmly, whether they're rational, calm or not, and just explain the perspective, and then maybe try it from a different side. I used to take them for walks, right? I would just take them out and maybe, I think they thought maybe I'd lose them in the forest or something, but no, take them out, and I'm not a naturalist, but I'd say, oh, can you hear that bird? Or I'd bring somebody along who can identify the species that were out there, and have them realize how just diverse our planet is, and our province and where we live, so that they understand that feeling that I'm sure all of you get when you're out in nature, that makes you feel like you're beyond yourself. It's not just about you. It's about everything around you. It's the sprawl. You're kind of not in the midst of it here on a much smaller scale, but when you go down to the city, you're probably seeing it just keeps coming out. And in King, I had thought they'd had some pretty good protections on there, and this route that I follow, the 15th side road is over to Mary Lake, is just been devastated on the south side. There's not, I think they kept a few trees, but there is just flat land there now that they're going to be growing houses instead of trees and farmlands. So it's still happening, and again, I'm not saying we don't need that, but there's a right place for it. Next. And then there's, I don't know if you've done this study here in your township, but it's ecological goods and services. Does anybody know what that is? No? Does any of the counselors know what that is? Or admit it? You don't have to say. But it's the natural value of the ecosystem. And it has a value on it, and there are huge studies that are done to evaluate what is the benefit of keeping a wetland? What is the cost per acre, per hectare of that wetland being there in terms of flooding, in terms of filtering water, in terms of all the things that those natural environments do for us. What is the cost of that? And what's the benefit of that? And therefore, if you get rid of that, that's the cost that you're going to have to pay annually. So not just one time, forever, if you take that wetland out. And there's a number of studies that you can look at. I'm simplifying it because there's massive amounts of studies and research that you can do. But we do this on a regular basis when we look at land that we're protecting. Typically, the land has a number of those features on it because that's why we'd be protecting it in the first place. But we do an analysis of the ecological goods and services. And I remember when I went to York Region Council maybe, well, I don't know, 20 years ago, I think, at the beginning when I joined the Oak Ridges Moraine and started talking about ecological goods and services, and they had no idea what it was. David Suzuki had done a study on it. Now they all have these studies, and I hope that your community either has those studies or are thinking about them, because it's really important to know, what does the air, the soil, the land, the water, what are the benefits of all of those, and what would it cost you as a community if you got rid of those? So what is the cost to you long term? And I think that's really important when you're looking at land and you're looking at where you want to develop it. Try and do those studies, because that has to be factored in to the long cost of developing that piece of land. Next. And yeah. So this is the thing we're facing now, right? Is what about this housing crisis? And what's happening at the provincial level is they're saying we're going to take, which he promised, he would not take land out of the Oak Ridges Moraine or the Greenbelt, and here we are the next term where land is being taken out of the Oak Ridges Moraine Greenbelt, and the land that they're taking out was. I have donors and advocates that worked on this in Uxbridge and Pickering for years, 40 or 50 years, trying to get this land protected. The land was protected. It went into the Pickering Ag Reserve. It had conservation easements put on it, but they put the easements with a municipality. I really wish that there was a land trust or something that they could have put those easements with at the time. They didn't. And so my understanding is the easements have been removed, it's been sold, and now it's been opened up for potential development because we need affordable housing. But we all know that affordable housing is not going to happen on farmland out in the countryside. That's not going to be affordable housing. That's not where people can get to who maybe don't have a car, don't have a bus route. It's not going to be affordable. The same thing is happening up in the Newmarket area, and they took a large amount of acreage out there. And now that the developer said, well, we'll look at donating some land for a hospital, and everybody's like, yeah, a hospital, because we do need another hospital in York Region. It's busting at the seams, and there's nowhere to expand it on Davis Drive. But there's a lot of land that extra in that area that's not going to be for a hospital. And again, it's going to be apparently affordable housing, but there's no buses. There's nothing there. There's no amenities. There's no there's no stores. There's no gas stations. God, I don't want another gas station on the Moraine, but there's nothing for those people. So it makes the public sort of question, why is this here? Why is this happening? And I think we should all question that, because why is it happening in areas that just don't make sense for development?
What kind of show do you want to see on Rogers TV? What interests you? Log on to rogerstv.com, fill out a show proposal, and tell us about your segment idea. We want to know what you want to see. Rogers TV, only on Rogers.
I was born and raised in Musqueam First Nation territory by my mother, who spoke Hunkaminam to me. As a child, I ceased using my mother tongue, as to use any language other than English was considered not being Canadian, so I was told. The old people came to me in a dream and reminded me of who I am. and where I come from. I have reawakened. My roots are strong, and I'm no longer a silent speaker. My language tells me where I'm from. It defines me and guides me to teach others to learn and understand our culture and traditions. A gift for those in the present and the unborn generations. What was lost is found. What was asleep has awakened. My blood is here, and I am complete. I have returned home.
The regulars, the guys who keep this place in business. Last week, they had something to celebrate. Jason had just finished university, so they toasted his profs, his TAs, his old roommates. Well, they toasted just about everyone. But I worry about and take care of my guys. So even when I know they're not driving, sometimes that means bringing them a little surprise. And then they had a drink to me.
Brought to you by Smart Serve Ontario and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
Next. So what can you do? Go native, and you can interpret that any way you like. But whether it's native plants, or you want to get a drum and drum on it, or you want to go on a walk and out in nature. But we are a part of nature, so feel that and understand that, and try to talk to people about it. Like I said, Dorothy and I used to meet people in the grocery store all the time, and I'd be gone for hours, right? But there'd be somebody else who I hope then learned a little bit more about why our environment's so important. Don't let the water tap drip. I mean, it seems simple, but if you put a pot under there, if you've got a drip, it's astounding how much water comes out. We don't want to do that. That's something really simple you can do. Reduce chemical use and dispose of them properly. Wash smarter, water wisely, reduce, reuse, recycle. We've been telling our kids that, and it's been a message for a number of years. Still really important. Regulate the groundwater pumping. So I think, Peter, you were asking about the aquifers. Be careful what you're doing if you're pumping out any groundwater. Make sure that there's a way of replenishing it, and that there's a reason for doing it, a really good reason for doing it other than your well that you need for personal use. Because once you've got it out of there, it's not going back fast. And then talk to the elected officials, whether it be these ones here or anyone who isn't here today. That's what they're there for, right? And I'm sure all of them will say, I see somebody nodding her head. That's what they're there for. And their role is to listen to you, and then to go back to staff or find out what is the right way to try to resolve all of the issues and balance those forward housing crisis issues, which I don't know about that. They say we need it across Canada, but does it need to be on a wetland? No. Does it need to be on top of a moraine? No. There's other places where that should be, that's closer to your current infrastructure, and it's less expensive to build when it's already closer to infrastructure, because the towns have to pay for expanded infrastructure, right? And now with the new development charges, the towns are paying for a lot more. So make sure these people here and anyone else who isn't. So this is just a little bit about the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust. You guys have all been really quiet. Do you have any questions for me?
Usually we have to do the question.
At the end? Okay, all right. All right, that's fine. So we now have over 5,000 acres of protected lands. Like I said, about half of them are farmlands. Some of them are nature reserves that are not public, because sometimes the public isn't as respectful as you would like, and often they will bring in species at risk on their hiking boots. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I make sure before I come back out of a property, when I've come out, I wash my hiking boots and get everything off them before I go out again, because you can bring along seeds on your hiking boots, and so then you are taking invasive species into another property. So, don't know if you knew that, but it's certainly a good thing. I used to always wonder why those little, you clean your boots off at the door, right? That works, but you really need to get all the dirt out and clean them. So just make sure you clean them before you go onto another property. And then, support climate change resilience, right? That's what we do. We're looking at flood controls. You can do that in your own property and support species at risk, and then just get out on the land. You will feel so much better, and then you'll get a better appreciation for it, and then you'll be able to talk to the counselors and planning people and say, well, I was there, and this is what it was, and explain to me why you want to take this all away, and hold them accountable. That's what they're there for, and that's what they'll do for you. If you are at all interested, you can take a look at our website. We've got a number of materials up here. We have a donate page there. I was just talking to Bob before and said, we've got donations. We've also have legacy site, and we just heard about our first large donation, a legacy donation from a very small donor who had only donated $400 during her lifetime and was not a regular donor, but we kept her on the list and sent her materials, and we just heard that we were a large recipient of her bequest with probably about $300,000 to $350,000. So, those are really important for you to think about as an individual. What is your impact when you leave this earth? Not only from what you've been doing on the earth, but as we know, there's a huge generational wealth transfer that's occurring now and will keep occurring. My kids know that they're in the will, but nature and the world's going to be in the will too, and it's a good conversation, I think, to have as a family. What is important to you and what might be important to them. So have those conversations. They shouldn't be hard. They should be fun. They should be, where do you want my money to go to? Where do you want your money to go to? It's part of their education to learn to donate. My kids and I sat down from very little, and they would pick charities when they were able to just point at, like a cow on a page and said, I want to protect a cow. So, okay, we'll find a cow to protect, right? And now they're regular donors. And so I think it's leading by example. And there we go. Thank you very much.